cuts, Verizon, and media giant Disney, plus big-time Wall Street bank JP Morgan Chase.
The president is going to Davos to speak to world leaders about investing in the United States. America first is not America alone.
We need a physical barrier. We also, though, need an end to chain migration and the visa lottery. And they've shown a willingness to negotiate. We're going to get a deal.
Liberals and a lot of Democrats are furious with you right now. What's your response to all that anger?
The public does not like shutdowns. People love the Dreamers, but don't want the government shut down for it.
I'm out here trying to figure out what Californians think about his first year.
I think it's really great.
Pretty convinced that it was a failure. I think he's an answer to prayer.
I'm honestly really happy, and I'm really looking forward to the next 3 years.
Live from New York City, folks, it's Wednesday, 6:01. This is your wake-up call. You're watching Fox and Friends from Studio F.
Good morning to you. Thank you for choosing us this morning. We're glad to be in your house.
Yep.
And we have so much to cover on both sides of this investigation, as well as the soaring economy, as well as the immigration debate, which shows early signs of not going anywhere over the next 3 weeks.
Shocking. But let's start with this. It looks like Robert Mueller, the special counsel looking into possible Russia collusion, wants to talk to the president of the United States and wants to talk to him pretty quickly. According to a story in the Washington Post, apparently he would like to have a face-to-face, but some of the other questions are going to be written down. And generally what he wants to talk about is the firing of Mr. Flynn and Mr. Comey and efforts that have been suggested to remove the current attorney general. The good news for the president is it sounds like that whole Russia collusion thing, not really looking into that.
Well, the president's attorneys have said, all right, we're going to talk about this, whether or not he's going to sit down with Robert Mueller. He said that we hope to have the president answer some in person and answer some on paper, some in writing.
Right. So here's the question. Jeff Sessions evidently just met with Robert Mueller. Some people called it a grilling. Others just said it just lasted a long time. Then we found out right before the new year, James Comey met with Robert Mueller. One thing is pretty clear. They're coming to a close on this. I mean, after the president, what do you do for a headline? They want to get answers. I mean, for me, if they're lining up every single person that had anything to do with this campaign over the last 2 years, it seems to me not in the president's interest to be able to sit down and try to recall every single interaction if somebody's there trying to maybe catch you in a perjury trap.
Right, exactly.
Especially if the main focus is supposed to be collusion, and then you're talking about obstruction of justice. What are you obstructing if there is no justice to obstruct?
Well, and the president all along has been talking about, look, you see these lovebirds over at the FBI, they hate my guts. You know, it looks like the deck is stacked against him in some parts. And, you know, it does suggest... Well, it does suggest that there has been a massive scandal at the FBI. You know, you look at the stuff we've learned in the last couple of days. Secret society, the missing text, the insurance policy, the dossier. It all adds up to, it looks like somebody in the FBI, and we know the lovebirds were involved, but we don't know who else could have been involved in essentially trying to pick the president of the United States.
Well, there are 50,000 text messages, and those don't even include the 5 months of missing text messages. And if you go through some of these texts, they're unbelievable. Listen to this one. This is Peter Strzok. He said this is 2 days after Robert Mueller was appointed special counsel. It was on May 19th, 2017. He writes, "You and I," to his lover, "you and I both know the odds are nothing. If I thought it was likely," meaning if there's collusion, "I'd be there, no question. I hesitate in part because my gut sense and concern, there's no big there.
No big there. It
so
could
that
be a nothing burger.
But he did join the case and got kicked off short after. Also, Lisa Page evidently has a text message out there that indicates that she wanted to finish off the Clinton investigation because that investigation was not quite done. That she says she wants to finish this. She says, for me in this case, I personally have a sense of unfinished business. Unleashed it with MYE, which is evidently the name they gave it, abbreviation they gave
exam.
it for the Clinton exam, the Clinton investigation that didn't really amount to anything.
And that was
now
Mr.
I need
Strzok.
now I need to fix it. Now I need to fix it and finish it.
So yesterday, Senator Ron Johnson was on with Bret Baier, and he revealed, he verified there are these texts about the secret society, right? But then he spilled the beans that somebody from inside is spilling the beans. Listen to this.
Top officials in the FBI knew that Loretta Lynch knew before she said that she was going to let Comey decide that he wasn't going to prosecute. He wasn't going to press charges at all. And then Comey later testified that there was no coordination between the Department of Justice, Loretta Lynch, and the FBI. You know, so that is coming into question. So what this is all about is further evidence of corruption, more than bias, but corruption at the highest levels of the FBI and that secret society. We have an informant that's talking about a group that were holding secret meetings off-site. There's so much smoke here.
So who's telling the truth? James Comey, he testified under oath that there was no coordination. Was there coordination?
Well, I mean, the way at the stuff, and it's just crazy. And the president himself yesterday tweeted this out regarding the lovebirds. Where are the 50,000 important text messages between FBI lovers Lisa Page and Peter Strzok? Blaming Samsung. That's what the FBI has done. They said, look, there was a problem with the software and retention at the FBI. We're really sorry, but we can't find them. Well, a lot of people say that's just plain fishy.
Well, on top of that, too, there is an Inspector General report about what went on in the FBI that's going to be out soon. And Chuck Grassley yesterday said the Justice Department statements about the messages need to be reconciled because blaming Samsung for the reason why these text messages aren't retained is absolutely out of control. Meanwhile, the other major story taking place yesterday is the aftermath of the 3-day lockout, which produced nothing for the Democrats and nothing but heartache and worry for the American people who are employed by the federal government. And by far, in the early round, very few people that I know really believe the Democrats got anything out of it. In fact, Chuck Schumer, looking to save possibly his career and leadership, came out and said, we're going to start brand new. They got 3 weeks to get this done. I trust Mitch McConnell is going to put this to a vote. And by the way, when I offered to fund the wall at whatever level, he wouldn't reveal the exact number. That is now off the table.
He never should have included the DACA thing in funding the government anyway, because it all just backfired on him. He originally said, we're going to include DACA, we'll give you DACA, we'll fund the government if you give us DACA. Well, the president said, no, I want the wall, I want the visa lottery system and
chain migration.
I want all three of those, and then you get DACA.
Exactly.
And then Chuck Schumer is getting blamed. It's the shutdown, the Schumer shutdown. You never should have shut down the government, Chuck Schumer. He's like, you're right, I'm going to fund the government, and I'm retracting my promise that I'll give you money for the wall.
I think he lost a lot of his constituency.
Yeah,
a lot of
People were
Democrats
mad at him.
defected. A lot of Republicans defected from their leadership. If this is going to get done, it's going to get done below the leaders. Guys like Joe Manchin and Lamar Alexander are fed up, and they were supposed to be the voice of moderation originally with the Senate, but they haven't been for 20 years.
I know we're talking about Washington, but this goes back to just what your grandmother always told you. Just do the right thing. Fund the government. Don't include all this other stuff, and then he wouldn't be dealing with this today.
Look, Chuck Schumer's in trouble with his base because his base is outside of his house in Brooklyn right now with protest signs. The President of the United States tweeted this out yesterday. Crying Chuck Schumer fully understands, especially after his humiliating defeat, that if there is no, he must have safety and security together with a strong military for our great people. Meanwhile, Chuck Schumer, here he is talking about how his base steamed.
Liberals and a lot of Democrats are furious with you right now. What's your response to all that anger?
Well, look, we've advanced the cause. What people have to understand, and I think most people do, most of the Democrats here on Capitol Hill perfectly understand, we don't have the levers of power. All of us in the Democratic caucus, not just the moderates, but the liberals as well, came to the view that if we carried it on much longer, two things would happen. A, no one would budge. The public would lose support of the shutdown. People love the Dreamers, but don't want the government shut down for it. So we cut the best deal that we could.
And meanwhile, people weren't tolerating that either. Outside his office in Brooklyn, they began to protest again. Remember, they stormed into his office in Washington before. And on top of that, too, they've interrupted Nancy Pelosi's speeches before. There you see the protesters. Now, all of a sudden, Chuck Schumer says, I don't have the power. He knows in the Senate you have 60 votes, and he kept saying that over and over again leading up to this. Bottom line is, he criticized the president about his negotiating or not negotiating. Do you understand the president realized where his leverage was, and it was all in the White House, and by keeping silent, that was negotiating because he realized Chuck Schumer had no hand to play. That was his tactic.
Well, the deputy press secretary at the White House yesterday, Hogan Gidley, he said he was slamming Schumer on Fox News yesterday, just saying this was a phony plan anyway. He was only offering $1.6 billion to fund the wall in exchange for DACA. And the president said, I need $18 billion to build this wall.
Yeah. So anyway, it looks like they're starting from scratch because the White House also said that bipartisan plan that came out at the middle of last week, that's a non-starter. We're not even going to consider that. So, guys, start over.
Back to the drawing board, and they only have about 2 weeks.
All right, it is 6:10 now here in New York City. We turn over there, and there's Jillian.
Good morning, guys. And we start with the Fox News alert. So let's get right to that and get you caught up. At least 33 people are dead and dozens injured after a double car bombing in Benghazi, Libya. The first car blowing up in front of a mosque while worshippers left evening prayers. The second exploding just 15 minutes later across the street. So far, no one has claimed responsibility. The teen who opened fire at his high school, killing 2 classmates, will be charged with murder. Police say the 15-year-old boy sprayed his crowded high school with bullets, leaving 2 teens dead and more than a dozen hurt. His motive is still unknown. One student claims he knew exactly what he was doing, and he looked determined.
I just, I took off. I started running. I was just scared for my life. This is terrifying. It's still it's like something out of the movies. It doesn't feel real.
3 students remain hospitalized at this hour. President Trump's America First mantra will take center stage when he heads to Switzerland later today. The commander-in-chief attending the World Economic Forum, where he'll meet with world leaders and business executives, pushing to stop unfair trade and promoting our economy.
America First is not America alone. We are open for business. We're a competitive country.
Expect this president to go there and show what America First continues to look like on the world stage.
Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin and White House advisor Jared Kushner also going on the overseas trip. An incredibly moving image here. Marines at Arlington National Cemetery giving a final salute to the first ever enlisted female Marine to retire from active duty.
We are proud to bring the title of United States Marine.
Master Sergeant Catherine Murray serving for nearly 20 years after enlisting in 1943. She was assigned to motor transport duties and drove 5-ton trucks during World War II. Murray was 100 years old. Guys.
God bless her.
Yes.
All right. Aww. Thank you very much,
Thanks, Jillian.
All right, 12 minutes down after the hour. We've been talking about it, concerns about corruption inside the FBI. Now, the man who led the hunt for the Unabomber has some perspective you won't hear anywhere else. He wants to know, how are these two still working at the FBI?
Yeah, the lovebirds.
Plus, a school bus packed with students slides backwards down an icy road. Look at this.
Oh, my.
Oh, my God.
5 seconds, 4, 3, 2.
Oh, no.
All right, we're going to play the entire video for you. Coming up.
Bombshell new text messages for those anti-Trump FBI investigators raising new concerns about the Russia probe and possible bias against the president after he won election and leading up to the election. So, are the rank-and-file FBI agents reacting? Do they feel they're getting a raw deal? Former Deputy Assistant Director of the FBI's Counterterror Division, Terry Turchie, has been talking to them. Those are the people on his speed dial, and he joins us now to weigh in. First off, when you look at Lisa Page and Peter Strzok, how do you think that reflects on the FBI? Or do you feel as though we're taking them out of context and not giving them a fair shake?
Well, first of all, Brian, we have to separate what happened at the top levels of the FBI from the rank and file, from people who are working in the trenches and the field divisions. Those people are doing their job, but they count on these people in these positions to help cover them from politics, because there's nothing new about the Department of Justice trying to inject politics into the FBI. And we always were on guard on that. But in this instance, this is a catastrophic failure. The FBI was failed at the top by the director, the deputy director, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page. Lisa Page, to give you a frame of reference here, was a chief legal counsel in the deputy director's office. That's a big deal. So this didn't just all happen. It wasn't just a series of coincidences. People who've worked major cases in the FBI know that these kinds of things just don't happen unless they're designed to happen this way. And when you look at little things, you have to be really alert to little things that were going on in the past year. For example, I'll give you 3 of them. Hillary Clinton numerous times was positive she was not going to be indicted. Remember that?
Yep.
She just had it all down, and she knew she wasn't going to be indicted. The Phoenix meeting on the tarmac, when we're then told that, we find out later that the FBI was more concerned about the leak that there was a meeting, I would have thought, and I did think early on, that, gosh, they wouldn't do that, such a glaring thing in front of an FBI security detail, but that wasn't the worry. The worry was the leak about the meeting. And then a couple days later, after the exoneration by Director Comey, the president is out going at a campaign rally with Hillary Clinton. He knew that she wasn't going to be indicted, or that would have never been planned. So there's a lot going on here, and people who've worked these cases see what's going on, and we need answers.
Terry, we have a whistleblower that talk about the secret society, and that was referenced in one of the text messages that wasn't lost by the Samsung phone. That's interesting. But you said we haven't gotten to the heart of this yet. What do you mean?
I mean that there's a lot of political dirty tricks going on here. I don't think this trail is going to stop at the door of the Russians. I think it's going to stop where the Democratic Party came through the door of the FBI. And I think this is Watergate Part 2. I think this is Hillary and Bill Clinton Part 2. We put up with all of this in the Clintons during my time in the FBI. And it was one scandal after another. And I think that if you look at past practices, remember what we always say, that the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior? This is all way too looking like the things I saw when I was there.
Terry, we're going to have you back. Thanks so much, because we're going to find out more. Hopefully those 5 months of text messages. Meanwhile, another major company investing in America, raising wages, adding jobs. This place, I think they call it Disney, and J.P. Morgan. Unbelievable.
Here's some quick headlines for you. The government shutdown not stopping our military from blowing ISIS fighters to bits. Weekend airstrikes killing 150 terrorists in eastern Syria, targeting one of the last remaining areas under ISIS control. Top military officials believe the head of the group is hiding in that area. And the accused terrorist that was charged with murdering 8 people on a New York City bike path on the west side, refusing to stand for a federal judge. His name is Saifullo Saipov. He's from Uzbekistan. He's accused of mowing down people with a truck in the name of ISIS. His lawyers have indicated that he would take a plea deal to avoid the death penalty. Steve?
Thanks, Ainsley. Remember when President Trump promised this on the campaign trail?
We're going to win so much, you may even get tired of winning. And you'll say, please, please, it's too much winning.
Well, thanks to his tax cuts that went through Congress, there's even more winning. J.P. Morgan Chase announcing yesterday plans to raise hourly pay for employees and add thousands of new jobs. Yet some Democrats won't admit the economy is winning right now. Will they ever stop complaining about it? Well, here for a fair and balanced debate, we've got the former speechwriter to Attorney General Eric Holder and Loretta Lynch, Jake Maccabee. Good morning to you, Jake.
Good morning.
Also, economist at the University of Maryland, Professor Peter Morici. Peter, good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, so Jake, let's start with you. How much credit does Donald Trump and the Republican Congress get for these tax cuts that seem to be stimulating the economy?
Well, they certainly own the tax cuts, but the reality is that for most Americans, and certainly Americans making less than $75,000 a year, taxes are going to end up going up over the next 10 years. So even for these lucky few who are getting bonuses or who are getting small raises, ultimately it's going to come out to be a loan, and it's going to come due eventually.
Okay, Professor, I don't know that it's a lucky few in the middle class that are going to wind up seeing more money in their paycheck, because I believe the withholding tables are changing 1st of February, and suddenly everybody's going to have more money in their pocket.
Well, about 91%, so let's just say 90% of Americans will have more money in their pocket come February 1, February 15, as these withholding taxes take effect. More importantly, though, the tax cut's going to make it less expensive to invest in America. It's just going to lower the cost of doing things. And at the same time, it's going to give people more money to spend, so it's going to boost demand. So if you have more demand and lower cost, you're going to do more. You're going to invest more. You're going to create more jobs. That should drive up wages. Now, the real $64 question is, will the economy do better? Barack Obama accomplished 1.7% growth.
Right.
If we can double that, then we can afford to extend these tax cuts beyond the 5 years, and the concern that some of the tax cuts will lapse will go away. So let's see how it performs.
Jake, I've heard a number of Democrats actually cite the former president for the reason the economy's taken off. Are you one of those guys?
Yeah, absolutely.
You are?
Absolutely.
Okay, so tell us how President Obama is impacting what's happening in the United States a year later.
Well, it's laying the groundwork for growth that took us from staring down the barrel of a second Great Depression and bringing us to where we are now, which is some of the best growth we've seen in a long time. Now, and let's remember, too, that when we're talking about multinational corporations investing in their workers, most multinational corporations, when asked what they would do with savings from this tax bill, said that they wouldn't invest in their workers, said that they would use it for share buybacks, said that they would use it for dividends, said that they would use it for paying down debt. And some large multinational corporations, even now, are saying that they're going to close offices, that they're going to lose workers. You saw Sam's Club say that they're going to close, Walmart say that they're going to close 63 Sam's Clubs. Kimberly-Clark is shedding workers, so is AT&T. So a lot of these multinational corporations, even now, aren't investing that money in their workers or in America. They're investing in their executives and in their top brass.
Although Professor Disney yesterday specifically cited the tax cuts from the President of the United States and the Republican Congress as the reason they're going to give 125,000 of their employees $1,000 bonuses.
Absolutely. There are lots of companies that will be able to pay their employees more money, and some of that's already happening. Apple's another. Foxconn from Taiwan is moving to the United States. I think it's pretty easy to demagogue this issue if you want to, and that is purposely confuse. Kimberly-Clark, Unilever, Procter & Gamble, the consumer product companies are under a lot of downward pressure because of Amazon. And they're going to be shedding jobs no matter what, though Amazon is adding jobs. That's just structural change in the economy. But more broadly, you know, it seems to me amazing that for a 7-year economic recovery that averaged 2.1% growth, Donald Trump becomes president, starts deregulating, tells businesses we're going to have a tax cut, and all of a sudden we're growing at 3%, 3 quarters in a row. That is something that has not been accomplished since early during the Bush years. Again, you can't take credit for the entire Bush boom, and we'll see what happens. But your record's in the book. 1.7% economic growth over 8 years, 2.1 during your recovery. Let's see if Donald Trump does better. What I would like to know is 2-3 years from now, if the U.S. economy has done better, are you willing to recant on those statements? Or will you invent new reasons to criticize him?
Look, certainly...
will you recant?
Certainly, Donald Trump started with a good hand. He started with an economy that was roaring, and we'll see where it goes from here. Believe me, I'd love to see an economy that keeps growing, and we'll see where it goes. But the reality is he started with a real good hand that he got from the previous president.
Okay. Jake, just out of curiosity, do you agree with Nancy Pelosi those $1,000, $2,000 bonuses are just crumbs?
Well, the problem with the bonuses is that they're not long-term wage increases, and that they're gonna come due when those people have to pay more money in taxes and in health care.
All right. Good discussion, guys. Professor Jake, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right. It is 6:30 now here in New York City. Coming up, our friend Ben Shapiro will speak on a big college campus tonight, and some students are getting counseling to prepare because he's there. I'm not kidding. Plus, White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders blasting the media's focus on Russia, Russia, Russia.
You guys are absolutely obsessed with everything to do with collusion, if it has anything to do with the president.
So why won't they cover the FBI and the president's accomplishments? Tommy Lahren has an idea, and she's next. But first, happy birthday to Neil Diamond. The singer is 77 years old, and fans around the world are sending him thoughts and prayers after he announced he has Parkinson's earlier this week. Let's listen.
Most of you have spent the better part of a year looking, digging, obsessing over trying to find something and have yet to find anything. In fact, a CNN reporter actually admitted over the weekend that when you talk to people about Russia, and that's all we talk about at CNN basically, they say they don't care because it doesn't have any effect on their lives. Frankly, this administration, we've said it time and time before, there was no collusion. There's nothing to it. We're ready to move on. Clearly, the American people are. And my guess is some of you are probably tired of talking about it as well.
All right, so there you have Sarah Huckabee Sanders during her press briefing yesterday. And if you take a look at what it says in the Washington Post today, talking about how the president would like to be, Robert Mueller would like to interview the president, it's about a line of questioning that doesn't have to do with Russia for the most part.
Well, we think, but who knows what Robert Mueller is actually thinking. And also, they did interview the first cabinet member in the Attorney General, who's one of the first to jump on board the Trump train as a supporter.
All right, let's bring in Tomi Lahren. She's a Fox News contributor, waking up early in California for us. Hey, Tomi, great to see you. What do you make of Sarah Huckabee Sanders saying, you know, all the media, you're obsessed with Russia. I wish you would take that same fervor, that same obsession, and focus on what Democrats have done, what's happening at the FBI, these text messages?
First of all, I'd like to say, isn't Sarah Huckabee Sanders amazing? If we're going to applaud women, we had the Women's March this past weekend. You know what? If these women really want to march for someone, they should march for someone like Sarah Huckabee Sanders, first mom to be press secretary. She handles this media perfectly. But to your first point about the mainstream media and their obsession with Russia, if they weren't obsessed with Russia and some sort of collusion that has zero evidence, then they would actually have to talk about the accomplishments of this president, and they don't want to do that. So they have to focus on this, or they would have to talk about the real collusion story that's happening, unfolding before our very eyes. And again, they're not going to do that.
Sure. And Tomi, I think what you're talking about is what's going on at the FBI. How did they lose 5 months worth of text messages? What did they do? You know, ultimately, what are they doing with the lovebirds there? Apparently, they're still working at the FBI as well in different departments. But that's the real collusion, and you don't see them talking about it on other channels other than this one.
Isn't it funny how, you know, certain sides of the political aisle, they usually have things that go missing to their benefit? The IRS scandal, Hillary's emails, now these text messages. I'm sorry, something stinks here. And yes, again, they should be talking about these things. These things are very real. They're in front of our face. We can see it unfolding, and we're covering it here on Fox News. But the other mainstream media networks, they're not going to cover it because it makes them look terrible for focusing on the Trump-Russia narrative and not focusing on this. And again, if they had to actually tell the truth, it would implicate President Obama, Hillary Clinton, and President Obama's FBI, and they do not want to do that. It would invalidate everything they've been saying for the last year, and they do not want to look silly, so they won't talk about it.
You know, fascinating development as the NFL just coming off its biggest ratings, I think, since last year's Super Bowl with the Jaguars game, and the Patriots played them and beat them in the fourth quarter. That played a lot into it. And the NFL back with some controversy. They've rejected, evidently, an AmVets ad that would have emphasized the need to stand for the national anthem, AmVets being American veterans. Their decision, the NFL's decision, this is a celebration of football. What's your reaction to them rejecting that ad?
Isn't it sad that it has now become too political or too controversial to ask Americans to stand for the American flag? That used to be a given. That used to be something that all Americans were proud to do, regardless of political affiliation, race, gender. That used to be a given, and now it's not. And we have the NFL in part to thank for that. And when they say that they don't want this game to be too political, are you kidding me? What have they done for the last 2 seasons? They've bent over backwards for activist groups and spit in the face of patriotic Americans, veterans, and our military. And now they don't want to be too political? Give me a break.
But the Super Bowl is oftentimes one of the most patriotic pre-games ever, with the flyover and the flag, and they usually have the military. I think they would have done a great job just to let the ad run, because they say they can't control the players. They also could say, hey, this is a reputable organization we're proud of. Maybe we don't love the ad, but they should have just let it run and avoided the criticism.
Well, the NFL has made it clear that they do not stand for patriotic Americans anymore. They stand to bow down to activist groups. And so now they're viewing this. It's funny how they're so picky and choosy with what flies and what doesn't. If you remember last year and past years, there have been ads that have run in the Super Bowl, Budweiser being another one, 84 Lumber being the second, that have advanced anti-Trump messages, pro-immigrant messages that were very political in nature. But apparently that was okay. But standing for the flag, respecting the flag and the anthem, now that's too political. Again, give me a break.
All right. You live in a liberal state, what's known as a liberal state. In fact, I read an article that Democrats now want to tax any profits that you would make after your tax, after the tax, tax returns or tax form. So let's talk about your state. You go out on the street and you talk to people in Hollywood, right, about President Trump. What was the reaction? We want to watch this and then we'll talk to you about it. Okay, Tommy?
What do you think about the first year?
I think it's really great. I kind of back him up. I mean, some of the things he says, or we're not on Twitter, I don't necessarily agree with all the time. But for illegal immigration, I totally back him up.
I think everybody's pretty convinced that it was a failure this year. I think he's an answer to prayer.
Have you always voted Republican?
No, first time.
Why is that?
Donald Trump, I wanted a change. Donald Trump was going to bring it to this country. Obviously, he's doing it.
I'm honestly really happy, and I'm really looking forward to the next 3 years.
Huh, not what
Where'd
I
you find
expected.
that?
Yeah.
Well, you know, there is more to that. We definitely encountered some other folks that were not as happy about President Trump. But I got to tell you guys this. You know, I moved to California from Dallas, Texas, of course, a much more conservative place. But I do have to tell you, as I've been telling Sean for the last 3 weeks, there are conservatives here. There are proud Trump supporters here. Even in West Hollywood, we found so many. We almost had to turn away the Trump supporters because we kept getting the same answer. It was actually sometimes hard to find people that didn't like this president. And that was in West Hollywood, of all places. Don't let the liberals fool you. There are conservatives here, and they are diverse.
All right. Tommy Lahren, thank you very much for joining us live today from Hollywood.
Thank you, Tommy.
3:41 in the morning. God bless her.
Meanwhile, Suzanne Summers told TMZ a couple of days ago, he goes, yeah, I support Donald Trump and it ruined my career, but I'm willing to do it.
Over.
That's it. And she's probably watching now. Meanwhile, straight ahead, Chuck Schumer all smiles after ending the government shutdown.
We're very pleased with how things came out. I think we have renewed momentum.
They look pleased, especially Dick Durbin, doesn't he? But our next guest says he's playing politics with our budget and putting lives at risk. And there's nothing to smile about. So look grim.
Going down the only road I've ever known. Like a drifter, I was born to walk alone.
Good morning and welcome back. Let's talk about extreme weather. Incredible video showing a school bus sliding backwards down an icy street in Massachusetts.
Oh my goodness. Oh my God. Oh my God.
Can you imagine? There were nearly 24 kids on board that out-of-control bus when it slammed into a car. No one was hurt. The street's very icy there. Well, fear of conservatism taking center stage on another college campus. The University of Connecticut offering counseling to any students offended by writer Ben Shapiro's speech today. The move, part of the school's new rules that only target conservative speakers. The university also taking aim at free speech, banning the public from attending Shapiro's appearance. Let's look at your headlines. Ainsley.
All right. Thank you, Jillian. Senator Schumer all smiles as the government reopens after that 3-day shutdown.
We're very pleased with how things came out. We're a lot better off today when it comes to the cause of Dreamers than we were 4 or 5 days ago. We've gotten a commitment from Senator McConnell, trust but verify, but he made it not just to Democrats, but to a good chunk of his own caucus. So that means a lot. And I think we have renewed momentum.
But are Democrats going to push another shutdown in 3 weeks if they don't get their way? And could playing politics with the budget be a deadly game for some Americans? Our next guest says yes. Andrew McKenna was a Marine and a DOJ prosecutor who is now a treatment specialist for addiction campuses. He shares his story of how his life changed with his own drug addiction, spurred by opioids, in his book. It's called Sheer Madness, From Federal Prosecutor to Federal Prisoner. Andrew, thank you so much for being here. You served time, 65 months behind bars after you were a Marine, you were JAG, you're both sides of the law. You went to prison for your addiction and robbing banks to fund your drug problem. Now you work in a treatment center and you see firsthand, you say it is deadly. If we see another shutdown, it could be deadly to Americans. Why do you say that?
There's no question it's going to be deadly. I mean, this is an epidemic. The number one cause of death for people that are 50 and younger is overdose right now.
Right.
It's taken over guns and traffic accidents combined. You know, for the CDC to say this is an epidemic, this is huge. My issue right now, and I don't get political, right? With addiction campuses, I get people into treatment. That's what I do.
Right.
That's all I care about.
So how does the shutdown affect what you're doing?
Because if you look at the funding for people trying to get into treatment, if you look at SAMHSA, which is Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, it's a federal agency. Under 2017 guidelines, contingency plan for a shutdown, they're going to drop down to 10% of their workforce. I looked at their website yesterday. It already says in the top, in red, the statistics or the information in our website may not be accurate due to the government shutdown. But here's what I'm really concerned about, Ainsley, is that I see Chuck Schumer on TV, and he seems smug. You know, like this is not a big deal. I see him laughing. I see him smiling. I see his staffers in the background. And I watch C-SPAN, so I'm a nerd. I get that, right? Mm-hmm. But I see these things, and I'm thinking, this is serious stuff.
So what's your message to him? Because in 2 weeks, we could see another shutdown, and lives could be affected, like you say. So what's your message to the folks in the swamp?
Put your narcissists aside and realize that this is real and that we're losing people every day. You know, at addiction campuses, that's fine. We're going to continue to take people and place them. But what about SAMHSA? What about the funding for these programs? It's going to go away. And if it goes away for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, thank God we only had 3 days of it going away. But I guarantee people have perished in those 3 days because they couldn't access treatment. You know, and this is politics at its worst. You know, I get it, you know, the Democrats and the Republicans, and I'm a centrist, right? But they can't come to some sort of agreement. I get that. But the Democrats are going to have to come. We need border security, period, right? We have MS-13, as you guys reported on recently. Drugs coming over the border. Absolutely. All right. Drugs pouring across. We've got to do something. And Schumer, with that smug smirk on his face, I don't know how New Yorkers could possibly reelect him.
Andrew McKenna, I'm proud of you. Thank you so much for coming on and telling your story and for overcoming your drug abuse. Thanks for being with us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And for what you're doing to help others. A Fox News alert. We now know Americans are among the dead and wounded in that hotel attack in Kabul. The Taliban now claiming responsibility for that. Former CIA officer Mike Baker on what this means for our role in Afghanistan. He's going to talk about that next. Plus, a new poll shows Americans are on President Trump's side when it comes to immigration. And how does Congress get a better deal for our border? We're going to ask Senator David Perdue in the next hour.
News alert now. Americans are among the 22 people killed when the Taliban militants stormed into a hotel in Kabul wearing suicide vests.
And officials now say it's possible the militants had inside help.
Joining us right now is former CIA covert operations officer and president of Diligence LLC, a global intel and security firm, Mike Baker. Mike, good morning to you.
Good morning to you guys.
The bad guys went in through a special door, and it looks like they probably had somebody hold it for them.
Yeah, essentially, this is the problem in Afghanistan. This is the problem in Iraq that we faced all these years, is the potential for somebody who's on the inside of one of the facilities that either we or private security are guarding to turn and provide information to the hostiles. And it appears as if that's what's happened. This hotel has been attacked in the past. It had a similar deadly attack going on 6 or 7 years ago. And this is going on a regular basis. We're talking about it now because obviously there were American citizens.
Why are civilians going to Kabul? That's not on my vacation list.
Well, but I know, but you have to remember also that even though the former president, President Obama, declared an end to the war, okay, to be fair, to war operations, combat operations, back in 2014, the troops never left. We've maintained over those years and since then about 10,000 troops, and now it's going up.
But the rules of engagement changed. We're putting another 1,000 in there. We already put more guys. We're escalating, and we changed the rules of engagement. I watched the 60 Minutes feature. No one's walking anywhere. They're flying everywhere. So it's right now it's more unsafe. But yet we're upping the ante when it comes to the actual battles.
Yes, that's right. We could end up with about 16,000 or so U.S. troops, men and women, in Afghanistan. And people watching are thinking, what, we're still in Afghanistan? And that is the bigger question. Right. What is the end game here? Look, the Taliban have no place else to go. It's like the Vietnam War with the Viet Cong. Where do we think they're going to go? And so they are now currently contesting or in control of almost 50% of the districts in Afghanistan. So this is a problem that is not leaving anytime soon.
But is Pakistan the issue, and aren't we cracking down on them? We're pulling back aid from them?
Well, the Afghan government says that this attack on the Intercon that killed these American citizens and several, almost 24 people in total, they say that the Haqqani Network is responsible for this attack. And the Haqqani Network has, for years, operated, for the most part, out of Pakistan. Their command and control has been out of Pakistan. Our relationship with Pakistan is not good right now. And this is not going to make it any better.
All right. Kidding. Thanks, Mike.
All right. Mike Baker, thanks. Coming up in the next hour of Fox and Friends, look at that lineup. Stick around.